32 ticks following. So they are swallowing. Monkey is swallowing. Snake self swallowing. Next, a swallow two will fly and come and swallow. You're ever swallow in a hollow gallow, making a whole lot of halabaloo. Jale kalu, we know say you chop the money some, so give me the loot. Do you really want a revolution or just your turn?
Welcome to Ake Festival 2020. Our theme, African Time. And I'm honored to have this book chat with my sister Tayari Jones, author of Silver Sparrow, which is the book that we'll be in discussion about. It came out recently. But we're hoping that during the course of the discussion, we'll all also maybe get to talk about her other book, An American Marriage. Both books that I enjoyed immensely. Tayari, welcome to Ake Festival.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
As am I. Would you kick us off with a little read of from Silver Sparrow?
Well, okay, but before I do, I want to just kind of set it up a little bit. Silver Sparrow is the story of two sisters, Dana and Charisse. They are only 4 months apart in age, which tells you right there that they have different mothers. But the thing is that their father, James, is married to Laverne and had been married to Laverne 10 years before he even met Gwen. So this man has 2 wives, 2 daughters. They live in the same town, but only one family knows the truth. His second family is full aware about his public marriage, but his public family is none the wiser. I'm going to read to you a moment when Dana was a little girl, and this is when she found out that her family was not usual. She's been to school. She's about 5 years old, and she's drawn a picture of her family, or what she sees as her family, which is her mother, her father, but also his other family. She's drawn them all in one picture, and she's so excited. She shows it to her mother and father, and the room goes quiet, and her father asks to speak to her. Dana, come here. James was wearing a Navy chauffeur's uniform. His hat must have been in the car, but I could see the mark across his forehead where the hatband rested. Come closer, he said. I hesitated, looking to the space in the doorway where Mother had disappeared. Dana, he said, you're not afraid of me, are you? You're not scared of your own father, are you? His voice sounded mournful, but I took it as a dare. No, sir, I said, taking a bold step forward. Don't call me sir, Dana. I'm not your boss. When you say that, it makes me feel like an overseer. I shrugged. Mother had told me that I should always call him sir. With a sudden motion, he reached out for me and lifted me up on his lap. He spoke to me with both our faces looking forward, so I couldn't see his expression. Dana, he said, I can't have you making drawings like the one you made for your art class. I can't have you doing things like that. What goes on in this house between your mother and me is grown people's business. I love you, you're my baby girl, and I love you and I love your mama. But what we do in this house has to be kept secret, okay? But I didn't even draw this house. James sighed and bounced me on his lap a little bit. What happens in my life, in my world, doesn't have anything to do with you. You can't tell your teacher that your daddy has another wife. You can't tell your teacher that my name is James Witherspoon. Atlanta ain't nothing but a country town, and everyone knows everybody. Your other wife and your other girl is a secret? I asked him. He put me down from his lap so we could look each other in the face. No, he said, you've got it the wrong way around. Dana, you are the one that's the secret.
That chilled me when I read it, and it just chilled me again when you read it. To give a child that type of burden, please just walk us through what it must have been like to be Dana and have to keep this secret on behalf of a father and on behalf of a mom. And, you know, the mom was okay with it, obviously, but to constantly be the one who has been given that burden and not being given the love and the attention and just waiting for Wednesday for meals with her father and her uncle. Can we talk about that?
I think the real damage to her is not only that she has to keep a secret, but that she herself is a secret. So that shame is part of who she is. It's not just how she lives. And you said her mother is okay with it. I think her mother is resigned to it. You know, when her mother found herself pregnant for this man who's already married, she had to figure out what she thought was the best she could do for herself and her daughter. And what she said to him was, "You must marry me also." Even though she knows that marriage is not legal, she is just trying to have some hold on this life because she wants her daughter to have a father, but also she wants a man for herself. I do think that's one thing.
I was going to say that because she really does want to be with him, because constantly it's almost like she is that woman who's waiting, like, I think he's going to leave her. I hope he's going to leave her. I think he's going to leave her. Like, constantly there's this hope that she keeps giving, and part of it is also in the way that, in a beautiful way, she improves herself. But it's almost like she's improving herself to show this man, to say, hey, you know, I'm not a hairdresser. Look at me. I'm a nurse now. I'm this and this. This is how I have improved. Let's talk about that. Her aspirations, her dreams.
Well, she wants a different life for herself. And, you know, the thing is, when a man has two women, each woman believes she is the one. So I believe his Laverne, his public wife, she feels he comes home to me every night. I am, you know, I've known him for decades. I am the one that's the most important. And then Gwen feels like I am the one with whom he has passion. You know, I was his lover and now I'm his wife. So we have a passionate relationship. And they're both right. I mean, I don't know that if it was up to James, he would just have both of them.
Yes, he would. The politics of hair comes through in this. And this is particularly interesting because South Africa has just had a protest for one of the pharmacies, because they did this advert where they said fine hair, and then they put normal hair, and they put a white woman, and then they put bad hair, you know, and they put a black girl, you know. And this is a country that has majority black population. But I was thinking about this with the whole idea of fine hair and good hair, and Dana and Gwen, the one thing that marks them is good hair. Can we talk about good hair politics in the Black community?
One thing that was important to me when drawing Dana and her mother is that I did not want them to be tragic figures that had nothing. Like, they are the secret family, they are marginalized, they have nothing. So they have this thing that is currency in their community, which is they have a lot of hair. They have very long, thick hair, and they straighten it, and everyone, you know, it's just so taken with their hair. But they also have dark complexions. And so I feel like Dana is described as looking like a Barbie doll that is dipped in chocolate, she and her mother. But they have this hair. And then Laverne, James's wife, is a hairdresser. And so when hairdressers see that so-called good hair, they drop to their knees. Like, they just want to worship. And
no, I was laughing because when Dana comes in and she wants her hair chopped off.
Yes, they act like she wants to be decapitated.
Yes, and Laverne is like traumatized and scandalized. Like, what are you doing? You know?
It's very interesting. You know, this thing that we call colorism and, you know, difference in color. I believe that color is not just your color of your skin. I think it's three things. I believe that color is the color of your skin, the shape of your face, and the length and texture of your hair. So these three things come together to determine whether or not people think that you're light or you're dark. But we just shorthand it by saying color, but it's a combination.
Your title, Silver Sparrow, how did it come about?
Well, you know, I was initially going to call this book Silver Girl because, you know, they have that thing where Charisse thinks of the girls, you know, when you're a teenager, you always think there's a class of girls that are better than you.
Better than you,
And she calls these the silver girls, who are not only beautiful, but also put together. She says they have natural beauty, and they also have what she calls beauty from a jar, which is, you know, getting your hair done, makeup, nails, all of that. And I thought that I would ironically call it Silver Girl because Dana is a silver girl, but she's also this, you know, marginalized person. But right when my book was getting ready to come out, you won't believe this, There was another book by a very popular white woman author who, writes summertime beach reads. Her book was coming out and it was called Silver Girl.
Silver.
And we thought that, I would do everything I could to promote my little book and everyone would accidentally go buy this other book because the other book would get so, have such prominent placement and people would get home and say, that's strange. I thought this was a book about Black people. So I had to have a new title. And it really worked out well because as you know, when you write a novel, you're writing in seclusion, you're all alone. But I needed a new title and I needed a new title in a week. So I was soliciting help from everybody, even strangers on the subway. I would say, I've written a book and it's about a man who has 2 families. What should it be called? I asked my own father. I said, Daddy, and Daddy said, I have an idea. I said, what? He said, you should call this book, What Do You Mean That's Your Daddy? And I was like, I don't know. I don't think that has enough gravitas. And he was mad. He was offended. But I realized that the hymn, his eye is on the sparrow, comes up in this book 3 times. And I decided that Dana is, in fact, the sparrow. She is the least of these. What you have done to the least of these, you have done unto me. And so I combined them. And I feel like that was kind of a divine intervention because once the book was called Silver Sparrow, when I was traveling with the book, I met so many people who were their father's secret children, and there was no polite way to refer to themselves. Who's going to call themselves a bastard? Who's going to call themselves a love child, an outside child? But people, men and women alike, said to me, I am a Silver Sparrow son. I am a Silver Sparrow daughter. And so in this title, it was a gift of language, not to me in my book, but it was a gift of language to people who experienced what I wrote about.
That is an amazing story. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, which I was laughing because I read it in your book and I just finished discussing it with my girlfriends from high school. And it was about how terrible first time sex is for women. And Cherise and Dana talk about this to each other like, oh my God, like, what was it? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Well, one thing about young girls having sex is that they are having sex with young boys. Like there's no one involved in this that knows what they're doing. So that's part of why. And also both of them, their boyfriends are they're not generous people. So they're not going to be generous lovers. And this is something that bonds them. They have this secret experience they had, but I think they both enjoy the idea of being sexually active, of having this secret from their mothers and have entered this adult realm, but it is not a space of pleasure like they imagined that it would be.
Or like everybody talks about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're like, am I doing it wrong?
That had me howling. That was my howling moment because I had like tear moments and then I had like the laughing out loud crazy moments like, oh my God.
Well, I am glad to have provided both.
Right. Raleigh. We're going to talk about Raleigh and how he puts himself in this situation where he has these 2 families and he is essentially the keeper of the secret. He goes and he signs the birth certificate for Dana. He's the one who is a witness at the other wedding. And,
yes.
Was he content with this? Just being the wingman?
Well, this is what I think. I think that no one has everything they want. One thing that I learned early in life is that no one has everything they want. And if you have everything you want, you will not have it all at the same time. So I think, yes, he probably would be more content if he had a wife of his own, but he's an orphan. And so he always wanted a family. And in helping James, he has 2 families. He is loved. He is needed. Every time he walks into the beauty parlor, everyone is so happy to see him. So while he may not be living, his Oprah style best life, I think he believes himself to be living a good life. He has everything except a wife.
Before James' mother passes on, he actually takes a child away. He takes Dana away and takes her to see her. And she's supposed to be doing an exam. Rather rarely comes and picks her up. I didn't understand. Like, this man has decided to keep this secret from his wife and his other family, but now he's bringing this child to this woman who is dying. What was the point? Why was he doing this?
Because he wants his mother to know to see her granddaughter.
Like, why did he do it the whole time?
Well, better late than never. I have some compassion for James, and the reason I have some compassion for him is that this is how, whenever I write a novel, I have to be able to understand each person's point of view,
character, yeah,
and understand it in a way that makes sense. And James feels like this. James feels like every time a woman has come to me and she says she's having my baby, I have married her. He feels I have left no woman unmarried, which is true. I mean, I can see entirely why everyone is angry, but he feels like it has been a lot of work and a lot of expense keeping these two families afloat. And he feels like he did the right thing twice. In a way he did, and also in a way he did not. And you must also remember, yes, Laverne married James when she was only 14, but he was only 15. He too was forced into a child marriage. He never had a chance to see what the world was like as a single person.
That one I'm aware. I just kept wondering also where Laverne is meant to get married to this guy, and when she loses the child, I kept wondering why the mother didn't take her back. And because there's so many problematic parents in this. James' mother only seems to be the one who's like, stand-up type of person, I mean, obviously we're all problematic, but I just couldn't with Laverne's mom, and I couldn't with Grant's dad,
Well, when Laverne is pregnant at a young age, it is not at all uncommon for people to turn their daughters out when they're pregnant, to just put them in the street. Particularly, in that was like in the early 60s in a small town. Yeah, so she put her out. And so when she lost the baby, she didn't want to go back. She wanted to stay with Miss Bunny and James. And so much of what happens in this story happens because Black women were forced to work as domestic laborers. Miss Bunny has to work for this white family, and she has to sleep at their house. So her children are unsupervised. There's no one there with the children. Raleigh exists because his mother was working as a maid, and she was raped by her employer, and therefore she doesn't want him because his face reminds her of her employer. Yes. So the fact I feel like in the American context, people act like Black women who are maids, that it's not a job, that it's a calling. But really, it's an incredible imposition to ask a woman to leave her family to cook breakfast for some other family. And this story is the consequences of that.
No, absolutely. It's a constant story also in the very South African context, because a lot of the times the women will leave their children maybe with a grandchild or with somebody else, and they're the ones who carry the child of the white child grows up on their back. They cook for them, they do everything for them, and they're estranged from their own children, and so when that happens, and I in that particular thing, I really, really, really understood it. And it really broke my heart as well, because I kept thinking, this is, strangely enough, in 2020, it's still a struggle that a lot of Black women are undergoing. And and I just wanted to say thank you for that, because I really appreciated that. But the other thing that I wanted to say is, while I was reading, is how well-rounded your characters are. What goes into your research for your characters? How do you, do you say, okay, I'm going to make this person like this and this, or do you use people or what goes into your character research?
Well, for Silver Sparrow, I should start off by saying my father is not a bigamist. I will say my father is not a bigamist to the best of my knowledge, because that's all any of us can say.
That's all we know, yeah.
But I have an older sister who is about 10 years older than me. She was born before my parents ever met, but I didn't grow up with her. I never saw her at holidays. I didn't know when was her birthday to send her a card or anything like that. She lived a very separate life than me. And that is what I noticed, that all my books always have someone with a sister that they have one parent, a father in common with, who is far away, because all my life I longed for my sister. And I think I wrote this book really as my way of connecting with her, and because I wanted her to know that I have longed for her all my life. And I had to think about, when I was writing Charisse, what, like, Dana thinks of Charisse as having everything because Charisse has her father. And when I was growing up, I didn't think I had everything because I had my father. I didn't know that having a father was a choice. I thought, when I was a child, I felt like your parents, they just came with the house. Like, it wasn't personal. They were there when I got there, and that's just how life is. But I realized that when we talk about child custody, we think of parents having custody of children, but children also have custody of their parents. And so to think about that, I had to examine my own life in a different way.
One of the things that I really appreciate when I read is learning. I love the art form of it, but I also like learning something new. And that's what happened when I was reading this, because I was like, I didn't know the history of the weave. How much research did you have to do on that?
Well, I remember in the 80s, I knew a girl who had a weave, but she only had it in one small part on the right side of her head. So all the rest was styled in little curls, little small, tight curls that came around the side. And then there was this little shelf of weave, because weave was so expensive that she only had like one little part. But it was very exciting. This little piece of hair, it kind of stood out like a little shelf on the side of her face. Anyway, so I researched that. And it came about in the 80s, and it was very expensive, and it had to be sewn in. But now weave is so inexpensive. And a lot of people are kind of against weave because they feel that it's women making, this beauty standard that is not Black, to have this long straight hair. But in writing this, I realized that I do kind of agree that weave is from a different beauty standard, but I also think that weave is a strange equalizer. I mean, that's why Dana is so stunned when Charisse has a weave, because Dana has long hair, and that's the thing that makes her feel special and better than other people. And then now, because of the weave, all kinds of people are having this long hair, and she feels a little frustrated because it's interfering with her specialness. So in many ways, fake hair is a strange equalizer.
You also led me down the rabbit hole after I finished reading your book, because now I went and I was researching the whole bit about Al Green and the Grits
Yes.
story.
Yeah, when I was growing up, everyone always mentioned Al Green, the singer, and the fact that a Black woman had thrown hot grits on him, and therefore he stopped singing soul music and only sang gospel after that. After that, he found the Lord.
Jesus.
Yeah, and that was always like this joke, like, oh, you better watch out, Black women will get angry and throw grits at you. But I thought about it a lot, and one thing I realized was the way that, first of women, it's a weird thing, because on the one hand, it's suggesting that Black women are wild and uncontrollable, but the fact that it's a joke really makes even their violence is funny, and it's not really scary. And so I did some research, and when I found out that the woman who threw the grits on Al Green, that once she had children, and she was leaving her husband for Al Green, and when she discovered that he was just, being a soul singer and being unfaithful, she threw those grits on him, and he had third-degree burns all over his body. He had to have skin grafts because he was coming out of the shower. So it was a very serious act of violence. And finally, that she killed herself. So he found the Lord not because of the grits, but because she killed herself. And that story is really quite a tragedy that had been masquerading all my life as a joke. And so I decided to weave it in, because this is a novel about what do you do when you find out that your husband is unfaithful, and this myth of uncontrollable Black female rage. And so I just kind of wove it into the story.
Yeah. No, but Laverne got a party, I guess. You know, in the end, she gets a party, and yeah, and then she wins, I guess. But is what type? Was that a bit of a pirate victory, or what type of victory is that,
She has
Tyree?
the life she wants. She has the life she wants.
Yeah, I
Here's the
guess.
thing. This is the thing. This is how Laverne feels. Laverne feels like my husband had the secret life. My husband cheated on me. So therefore, I lose my marriage. She sees her marriage as, yes, it's something that she's doing with her husband, but it's also a lifestyle. It's also her world. So she feels like, why should I lose the life that I've worked for because he can't behave? That's how she feels.
Mm.
You know, she's like, oh, if I divorce him, would I have to move? Would I lose my beauty shop? All because he doesn't know how to behave. And she feels like, no, I will not lose what I have. I will not lose my life. And that's the choice she makes. Would it be a choice I would make? No. But Laverne is very different. She's of a different generation and she has different things. She doesn't want a divorce. She wants her husband to behave.
Class also comes up in your book in a very interesting way because you know you've got on the one side you've got Laverne and they have money and she's got all these things going on, and then you have on the other side you've got Gwen and she doesn't have as much money, but she holds herself in a very different way, you know. And whereas Laverne does this ghetto thing with her, although she's the one who stays in the burbs in the rich area and has a certain type of life. Can we talk about that? Can you tell me
What is
something
this
about
ghetto thing she does? What
no,
is this
she's
ghetto
just
thing she
like
does?
the what you call it, the whole salon gossipy vibe and whatever. Whereas this one was very, very, I don't know, she
Girl,
was
women of all classes gossip in the salon.
no, I know, girl, but it was just like there was a certain like I don't know, like Gwen carried herself with a certain, I don't know, like where she was just like
I
nosy
don't
by any
know
type of
if there's
thing.
any
That's how I read
neighborhood
her.
where a woman walks into your place of business and says, I'm also married to your husband and this is our child, and you are expected to behave like a lady.
No, man.
I mean,
I'm thinking about before that. I'm thinking about like, wow, I just don't know, you know. I'm trying to figure out if the roles had been reversed, would Gwen have gone like just like, yeah, I'm not having this, you know? And
I
that
almost,
hilarious woman who kept clapping.
yeah, I mean, I think that when someone says there's an unwritten rule of people having secret relationships and affairs that the woman who is the outside woman is not to approach the wife. It is such a violation of social norms. So when Gwen violates the social norms, of course, Laverne is upset and embarrassed in front of all her people, and she puts her out of her shop. I don't think that's a class issue. I think where the class comes in is that, think about it, Laverne and James both grew up very poor. They had an incredible amount of class mobility, which, you know, if you think about it, in the 1970s, in the 1960s and 70s, because of the civil rights movement and the lifting of segregation, Black people had access to things they never had access to before. So a lot of people made a significant jump in class mobility. I think about my own parents. My father grew up poor, 10 children in 3 rooms, but because the world changed because of civil rights, he was able to get a PhD, something his parents couldn't have dreamed of. And think about this, his brothers and sisters who were older than him, by the time the world changed, they were already settled in their adult lives. So that jump in class is what makes you feel like Laverne and James are between two worlds, because they grew up poor, but now they're not. And compared to what they started with, they have money, but they're just middle class people. I mean, he drives a car for a living and she does hair. So they're not really rich, but they are comfortable for the first times in their lives. And they are going to defend that comfort to the death. They are not going to do anything that's going to disrupt the fact that they can sleep easily at night and have all their needs met.
Miss Banishbroach. I
Yes.
was really hurt when Charisse took that.
Oh my
And
goodness. My friend Carmen, she is obsessed with the brooch.
I was really hurt.
Well, okay, so Miss Bunny, when she's dying, she gives her newly discovered granddaughter this piece of jewelry. And this is the proof that they have that this is really James's child. See his mother's brooch. And once it gets lost, they are separated from it in this big confrontation. And of course, Dana wants it back. It's the only thing she has of her grandmother, and she wants her sister to give it back to her. And her sister says no.
It's my grandmother.
Yes, I wasn't surprised. I mean, I feel like this has become just like Game of Thrones or the Hunger Games between these two women, these two families. I think that probably now, because now Dana and Charisse are about my age, I think they probably have worked it out.
Well, they are quite grown. There's somebody who actually sent a question to you for the festival. And this person wanted to know, and of course, you and I know how it ends, so I'm not quite sure whether they finished. It's Monica Van Buskirk from the US. What kind of woman is Dana going to grow up to be? And you of course showed us that because we see right at the end where she has a child and whatever. But who is she as a personality? Does she take more of her mom's personality, or does she decide she's going to be really different?
Well, I think that she takes something from her mom's personality in that she is very distrustful of the way things are supposed to be. So I think she'll be a trailblazer and make her own way. I don't think she's going to try and run and be a suburban housewife just to prove that she too can be wifed. I think she's going to live in a different way. I mean, at the end of the book, we do see she's cut off all her hair. So she's kind of stopped using that kind of currency. I always feel like when a woman cuts off her long hair, she is definitely making a choice about her appearance, that she's not living for the preferences of men.
Mm. When Charisse comes and approaches her, when she's picking up her daughter from school, I still kept hoping that she'd give her the brooch. I was like, just give it back,
I know. Also, I like to try to write people in stories who behave the way real people behave. Like exactly. They don't know they're in. Charisse does not know she's in a book. She does not know that you're watching her. She just knows that her beloved grandmother is gone and she is not giving up that brooch.
Right. Could you please read us a little something from Charisse's little section? Because I feel that we've been talking about her, and I think everybody should get to know a little bit about her as well.
Okay, this is Charisse when she was a girl, remembering working in her mother's hair salon. Maybe it was because I spent half my life in my mother's beauty shop, but it seemed like I knew quite a bit about marriage, even when I was just a little girl. It was probably a bad sign when I touched my kindergarten teacher on the knee when she looked unhappy and said, "Marriage is complicated." That was my mother's favorite refrain. She said it at least daily to some woman dripping wet in the shampoo bowl. A shift in pitch flipped the meaning entirely, but the words were always the same. In the car that day on the way to the beauty supply store, talking about George and Gracie, she didn't say, "Marriage is complicated," in a between the lines way like she did when she tried to talk over my head. This time she said it like she just needed a word from another language, but all she had was complicated. I guess I'll stop there.
The other thing that I wanted to highlight, and I see it with both of the books of yours that I've read, is how your characters are so unapologetically themselves. They're not caricatures of blackness. Is this something that you deliberately do, where you're saying, you know what, if you have decided that Black people are like this, I'm not writing for you. I am writing for people who I know. Is this a deliberate political and literary statement from you?
I think it's just how I grew up. I grew up in Atlanta, in a world very much like the world in the book. I grew up in an all Black part of Atlanta, all Black middle class part of Atlanta. So that meant my doctors were Black, my teachers were Black, anything that I could imagine any person doing, I could imagine a Black person doing, because that Black people were entirely my imagination. For me, it was like, you know how people tell you that the world is 80% water?
Mhm.
You believe it, but you don't believe it. Like
Yeah.
you know it, but you say, if the world is 80% water, how are we sitting here? How are we sitting here? And that's how I felt about Black people. I understood that in the US, Black people were a minority, but I felt like, if this country is really 80% white, where are they?
Where are
Show
the
me
white
these
people?
white people. Where are they? Because I never saw them. I never really knew anyone white until I was almost 20 years old.
Oh, okay.
So when I write these characters that live in Black worlds, it is a political choice, but it's also just the truth as I knew it.
Hmm.
So I didn't have to stretch to get there. And I never grew up believing that Black people couldn't do this or that thing, or couldn't write books, or couldn't go to the moon, or would never be president. I never felt that.
Okay. So your parents, when you said you're going to be a writer, they're like, great, well done. Go ahead.
No, no, they were not, because I am still what, a girl, but they were more like, that's unreasonable. They were like, why do you do this? You should get a PhD. And it was very terrible. I went to pursue a PhD when I was very young, and I was so unhappy. But luckily, for my university, I had gone to an all Black women's university called Spelman College in
Spelman.
Atlanta. And my mentor was, you know, there was there, I met a writer, and she was my teacher, and she's stayed in my life ever since. But when I was there, miserable getting a PhD, because I felt like I wanted to write books. I wanted to be a bird, and I was being trained to be an ornithologist. And I wrote to her and I said to her, I'm so unhappy here. I hate it. But I don't want to quit. I don't want to disappoint my parents. I'm afraid that if I quit the program, they may not accept another Black person. And she said to me, remember, dear, your life is just that. It is your life. And so I dropped out of the PhD program and decided to pursue writing. And my parents thought it was ridiculous, but I'm grateful they didn't stop me. They didn't encourage me, but they didn't stop me. And that is the thing. When people don't support you when you want to be a writer, it's really not that they don't believe in you. I mean, it's a little bit of that, but it's also they don't believe in the world. They don't believe the world will take care of you.
Hmm.
They're happy now. They're all into it.
No, I hear you. That's
And
funny. My mom was like,
I found out that my dad wanted to be a writer when he was a boy, but
oh,
that was
wow.
completely, out of that wasn't available to him. So in a way, I'm surprised though, like I'm living his dream, but I'm surprised that he didn't encourage me more in it.
So does he read all your stuff? Well, I mean, I can understand why he didn't encourage you more. My mom is a big reader, but she was like, when I said I was gonna be a writer, she said, yeah, a lot of people learn to write in first grade. Why can't you aspire to something better? You know?
Are we sisters? Do we need to write a book about how we found each other in our adult life?
You know? But now she's like the one person who's canceled people. She's canceled some of her friends because they haven't bought my books, you know?
Oh
So,
yes.
yeah. Yeah. Does your dad do that? Do your
My
parents?
dad, yes, my parents are like a two-person PR machine for me. And that has been it's been very gratifying to see their support of it now. Yeah, it's been, I mean, my novel, An American Marriage, that was published in 2018, it really changed the way that everyone thinks of me as a writer now. I published my first book in the year 2000, but I feel like now everyone believes I'm here to stay, and it's a different kind of thing.
And it was a beautiful book, by the way. It was that other book that I was just like, I read it and I was like, wow. And then I had like a book hangover for a very long time, you know, and I couldn't read anything for a while. So thank you for that as well. Maybe we can touch a little bit on that just as a tease for other people who may not have read it.
Okay.
Yeah. So in summary, for those of us who are watching, An American Marriage is a story about Roy and Celestial who are all in love, and then Roy gets arrested, and Celestial gets with their best friend, more or less.
You don't have to let me talk about this book.
All right, let me give it to you.
Take her off the screen. An American Marriage is the story of Roy and Celestial, who are a young couple. They've only been married 18 months. Their relationship is passionate yet complicated. And Roy is arrested for a crime he doesn't commit. And he's given a 12-year sentence. And they've only been married 18 months. And so it's really about the expectations of waiting, of marriage, of gender. And, what does it mean to be faithful? What does it mean to be selfish? Is it more selfish to ask someone to wait for you? Or is it more selfish not to wait on someone? Like, is it reasonable to ask another person to interrupt their, like, what can you ask of someone? So they're okay, come back. Now I'm ready.
There we go. But it also deals with a very important thing, which perhaps has been coming up quite a lot: the injustice that Black people are constantly facing when dealing with the law in the U.S. Because this is why Roy goes to prison in the first place.
Yeah, he's wrongfully imprisoned. He is misidentified. He's accused of rape. He's in a small town in the South, and he is accused of rape. And it wasn't him. He just didn't do it. And he's convicted, and his family, his wife is very surprised because she knows these things happen, but she doesn't think it's going to happen to them. He doesn't think it's going to happen to him.
We went to the good schools. We speak well. It doesn't happen to us, but then it happens to us.
It happens to them. And he feels like he was born in the small town, and he felt he had escaped the small town. And it's like the small town came back and got him. And when he was growing up, it was always a conversation of, all you want to keep your daughter from getting pregnant, and you want to keep your son out of prison. And his mother thinks she's past that too. But it was important to me that I not write a book where that seemed like it was inevitable, which is why I included Andre, the other Black man in the story, because I didn't want to say that, every Black man is going to go to prison.
Mm. And you also have a really fantastic stepfather in Roy's dad, and Roy doesn't know about it for a long time. But it was so heartwarming for me, because always, step parents are always made to seem like that other horrible person.
In every book I write, I think I have one really nice parental figure. I feel like in Silver Sparrow, it was Miss Bunny. And in this one, it's Big Roy. And I always have someone living in a small town, because my father grew up in a small town and I grew up in Atlanta, a big city. And in some ways, I feel like I'm the child of an immigrant, that my father immigrated from, more small town rural life to the city, and that I'm his child that lives in a world that is like he has a secret past that I can't access because I didn't grow up there. And also because I grew up after the civil rights movement. I grew up in 1970. I was born in 1970. I never knew Jim Crow segregation. So I never knew the trauma that my father grew up with. So this is why with Roy, he's from the small town and he migrates to Atlanta as though it's the promised land.
Yeah, he really does that. And when he comes in, so he's going just to visit his parents. And it's supposed to be like a little simple thing, which gets them down. And part of it is because really his wife cannot get along with his mom,
And that is the way that racism makes you insane, because everyone has the right not to like their mother-in-law. That is not an exotic problem.
Exactly.
Or Roy and Celestial have this little argument and he goes out to cool off. That is not unusual. It is not exotic. However, in the face of racism, these little human things that everyone is entitled to become the end of the world.
What took you so long to come with the second one, and what made you rush so fast when we're just still enjoying this? And
I have to tell you something.
Bring us this.
Actually, I'm going to tell you something. Silver Sparrow has been out for years. Silver Sparrow came out in 2011. I was looking for another copy. So this is the UK. See, this is my message this is my, and see, look, isn't it? They match.
Oh, wow.
Yes, a really wonderful
I have those ones.
Nigerian, a Nigerian Brit wrote, made this art. Isn't it beautiful? I think this is the best cover of all the
Gorgeous.
covers
It's
from
beautiful.
all the covers from all over the world. This is the best.
I really like it.
Her name is Jamila Okubu. She's Nigerian, and she's
Oh, it's
talented.
gorgeous.
Yeah, and then she made me this one to match.
Oh man, I really like this cover. I think it's so beautiful.
You know, the difference is, you know, it's such a difference between the way books are marketed in the US versus the rest of the world. In the US, if you're a Black writer, the way that they signal that your work is important is that they do not put any indicator of your race on the book.
Mm.
And then in the other countries, I feel like this book is like, did we mention that she's Black? Totally Black, absolutely Black, so Black. So I love it so much.
You know, I was when you say that, you actually just remind me of the conversation we were having with Jen. And I was thinking about the two different titles that she has for books, for the American audience and for the rest of us. And I was laughing because I was like, this American title of yours, what is it? It's like a woman is an ocean, a girl is a
Girl is a body of water.
What is it? You know,
girl-
because over here it's the first woman, and you know, it made so much sense to me when I read the book, you know. So now
Yes,
I'm like,
I have
okay,
that book. So I just had that book in my hand. I kind of want to hold it up for everyone to
I
see.
know. There you are.
Yes, I really loved this book.
It's a beautiful book, isn't it? I enjoyed it as well, very much.
I wanted to eat it. It was so good. But yes,
You
they
know-
gave her a different title here because they felt like the first woman sounded like it was going to be about the fossil Lucy.
Yes, I heard. I'm telling you, that is so ridiculous. I was like, I called her earlier today because I just enjoyed your conversation. And I was saying to her, please, can you explain to me? Because somebody sent me a message and they said, did Jennifer come out with 2 books this year? 2 novels this year? I said, no. One is in the US and one is the British title. And so I called her and I said, I've been meaning to laugh at you because I wanted to know, what is this? What is this? A girl is a well, a river. What is a girl is a river? What is that? You know?
And I have to say here, people love the title. People love the title.
I heard.
My book has some like in Germany, it's called In Good Times and Bad Times.
Oh, okay.
Because that word American doesn't play well over there.
Well, no, I can imagine, you know.
And in France, Silver Sparrow is called Ashtray Kisses.
Why?
Because Silver Sparrow translates weird into French. They're like, it doesn't make any sense. And there's a moment when...
But ashtray kisses, like, I'm thinking smoke, ashtray.
Well, you know, James smokes so much. And
Yeah.
there's a moment when she says, I will never forget the smell of his ashtray kisses. And they use that.
Oh, okay. I'd forgotten that. But not that he smokes a lot. I always remember that because it was just all over the space and stuff and everything. But I'd forgotten that line about ashtrays. Oh, that's clever. All right. Okay.
Yeah, the international publishing, it's so interesting, the way that different stories are consumed. Like, for example, when I went to, was I in Denmark, Sweden? No, I was in Scandinavia. Where was I? But anyway, when I was somewhere in Scandinavia, everyone was saying, can you tell us more about this racism? We don't know racism. Thank you for talking about racism. And so I felt a kind of a way about being held up as the emblem of injustice, as though they don't have it in these other countries. I'm sure with South Africa, people are the same way, like, tell us, because they feel better about themselves imagining how terrible it is. And just even within the US, because I'm from the South, people in the North say, tell us about this Southern racism, as though they don't have racism.
A few of my friends and I have deliberately gone on a mission where we refuse to turn up when invited for panels where we have to explain Blackness in any way. Like, oh yeah, by the way, can you explain what it means? So, you know, as a South African, you know, how did you feel when Mandela? I'm like, no, it's not a Mandela book.
Yes.
Can we talk about my characters? Can we focus on that?
I know it's such a thing because you don't want to seem like you're a person that is against political content. Like you don't want to come off as saying, oh, I don't want to talk about that. But it's not the only thing you want to talk
Thing
about.
that you can talk about. Exactly. And I think sometimes it's particularly problematic for me when in South Africa, because what they generally do there is you'll be on a panel where somebody is asking the white writer about their characters, about intertextuality, the way they're writing, this and that, and then they'll ask you about what do you think about the political situation, and how the ruling party is doing. Huh? Should we have given you back the country? Type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, go away.
Yeah, I know it's such an ongoing struggle. I mean, because we are artists and we want to be respected as artists.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're also intersectional, but at the end of the day, there is no way that Tayari can speak for all Black women in the US. You can only speak from your experience, and because we certainly don't ask Hilary Mantel to speak for all white women,
Right.
or,
Yes.
we just ask her to talk about her book or whatever it is, or they do,
Yeah, it's very complex because I think we're asked about politics too much. I think that the rest of them are not asked about politics enough. I would like to know what prominent white writers have to say about racism. As a white writer, how do you think your work fits in? And hear what they would say. I would be so curious. I would be like, yes.
Actually, that should be like a question. Yeah, totally. Well done. Yeah, I'm totally putting that in next time I'm doing things, eh? Were you part of the All Lives Matter people? Or
yes, or what do you think your novel has to do with the Black Lives Matter movement? When I was writing An American Marriage, it was suggested that I put some more Black Lives Matter into the book. Like I have some Black Lives Matter right here, and I could just, sprinkle a little Black Lives Matter on it. It kind of drives me crazy, but I will say this. One of the things that I benefited from earlier in my career is that my books were marketed fairly exclusively to Black women. I was not given an extensive book tour. I was only sent to places where there were a lot of Black people. And there was part of me that was jealous of the people who got to go all over. But I built my audience with Black women. They were there for me when I wrote my first book. When I wrote my second book, which sold like 18 copies, 17 of the 18 copies were bought by Black women. And they were so generous to me and helpful. Like when I was working on I had a hard time when I was writing Silver Sparrow, and because I couldn't find a publisher because I wasn't profitable enough. And a Black woman, I moved to the north, to New York, because I felt like that was the center of publishing. And I got a package in the mail at my job, and it was a blanket that had been knitted for me by a Black woman who said, I know it's so cold up there. And I thought, I may not have a big following. I may not be making a lot of money on my books, but my white colleagues, even though they sold more books, no one is mailing them a quilt. So I had a small audience, but it was an audience that took care of my soul. And it was because I had been marketed in this segregated way. And so then when An American Marriage came out and it was so, it was everywhere, those Black women celebrated with me because they felt like, yes, the world knows
we've been
known all this time.
We've been knowing.
Yes. And I felt I'd never had that. I know that when some other artists get that moment, when they get that, what they call the crossover audience, they are regarded with suspicion by the home team. But because the Black women had been with me so long, I felt like we moved into this next sphere together. And that has been the greatest gift for me in my experience as an artist.
What is the nicest thing that somebody has said about Silver Sparrow? Like a random stranger comes up to you.
Okay, so I was in a town where I didn't really know anyone. I'd done a book event, and a Black woman came and she bought about 7 or 8 copies hardcover. I thought she was in a book club because sometimes people do that. They'll send one person to get it signed for the whole club. So I thanked her, didn't think about it again. On the paperback tour, I returned to the city and she was there, and I smiled at her because I remembered her face. I didn't remember the details, but I remembered her face. And she gave me a package and said, "Don't open this until you return to your hotel." I said, "Okay, well, thank you," because I had a big line I was signing. I got back and I opened the package, and inside was a photograph of about 6 or 7 Black people, and they were all holding the book and smiling. And
Oh,
inside was a note. And she said that when her father had died, they discovered that he had all these other children, and that she had this idea that they would read the book together as a book club so that they could talk about the book. And in that way, talk about their own lives without having to talk about their own lives, and that the book helped them to heal. And that was the best.
oh my God, that is such a beautiful,
I,
tearjerking story. That
I
is
felt like that.
beautiful.
I feel like with every book, I have one experience, and I say, "Oh, that was the purpose that God sent me to write this book for this person."
Ah, that is a beautiful story. Oh my God, did she like give you her number or something? Did you like find out? Oh my
Nope.
God, I would have been like, wow, that's a beautiful story.
It meant so much to me. I felt because
It
sometimes,
does.
as a writer, we know that literature can help, but sometimes you feel like, am I really getting anything done writing these books?
What has been your absolute, absolute, absolute nightmare story as a writer?
I got kidnapped.
Huh?
Isn't that crazy? I got kidnapped. It was
Why?
insane.
Why? Like, are you
Exactly.
serious?
Okay. I was at a book festival on Martha's Vineyard. Martha's Vineyard is
In
it's a
Boston.
I, it's an island off of the coast of Massachusetts. It's a very elite
Mm.
place. And I was there for a book event, and I gave my reading, and a woman came up to me. She's a Black woman, and she said, I'm here from the festival. I'm supposed to take you to your next location." I said, "Oh, okay." She was wearing a T-shirt from the festival. So I got in her car,
Uh-huh.
and as we were driving, she was talking, and I knew something was wrong. And we were driving in the opposite direction of the festival. And she was
Okay.
like, "I'm your biggest fan. No one else understands you." It was so crazy. And so, so
I'm
she
sorry.
took me.
I'm sorry to laugh, but it's okay. Like if this had been a man, I'd be having a totally different reaction. But I'm just
And so
like,
then
right.
she took me to lunch, and she ordered this very expensive lunch and this very expensive champagne, Dom Perignon. And she's just talking to me, and I'm so nervous. And she's like, "You're not drinking the champagne." And so I was trying to drink it, trying not to, trying to, look at the waiters like, "Help, help." And to make matters worse, I was on crutches at the time because I had injured my foot. And so I finally told her she ordered a second bottle of champagne. And I told her I had to go to the bathroom. And so I was on my crutches, and I went by the kitchen, and I said, "Help, I have to get out. Can you let me out? I'm being kidnapped." They didn't believe me, but they showed me the back door. And so I hopped out on my crutches, and it was raining, and I was like hopping in the rain, hop, skip, and I missed the whole festival.
How did you get back there? Didn't she
I didn't
follow
get back
you?
to the festival. I just hopped and skipped. I wasn't that far from my hotel, so I just hopped and skipped back to my hotel, and I just was so sad and hungry. It was terrible. And of course, when I tell this story, they say, only you would get kidnapped, and they were force feeding you champagne and lobster. But I was
Champagne, like
afraid.
dumping on, like wow. And then oysters and stuff, eh?
Hop, skip, hop, skip.
Oh my God, that is a crazy story.
It's a crazy story. I was
Oh
like,
my
I've been kidnapped
Oh
on Martha's
my God.
Vineyard.
I thought these are
But
things that
luckily, it's an
happen
island.
in Stephen King books.
I know
But
someone said it, but luckily Martha's Vineyard is an island, so I mean she could have only gotten so far. But true story.
oh my God. And she didn't try to find you on different platforms and say, oh, by the way, um, how could you just abandon me or something? You never heard from her?
I'm telling you, it's been 10 years, and I have only now started talking about it because I was always a little afraid.
Perhaps though, I understand that telling us to wrap up, but perhaps before we go, we can have another little reading. just so that everybody gets excited about this beautiful, amazing work, Silver Sparrow.
Well, thank you. Okay, I'm going to read a little bit from the very end of the book. This is after what has been done in the dark has come to light. This is Dana. My mother had taken to her bed, and I didn't like leaving her alone, but I allowed myself an hour more. I took the elevator underground and walked the aisles of the parking ramp until I found the Lincoln. I sat on the hood as the engine beneath me ticked like a patient bomb. My father approached the car at 8:15. He had to smoke. I may not have been his legitimate daughter, but I knew him well enough to anticipate his cravings. I said, "Hey, James." He said, "You can't be here." I said, "I know." "Then how come you're out here?" I told him the truth, that I wasn't sure. I think I wanted him to hug me and tell me that I was still his daughter, that blood meant something. Yes, he could walk away from my mother, but could he walk away from me? My mother could find another man, but there wasn't any way for me to replace my father. "Don't you love me?" I asked him. "It's not about loving people," he said. "You have to go home now. I've made my choice, just like you made your choice when you went bothering Charisse. You almost took my whole life away from me." "What did you think was going to happen?" I asked him. Did he think that I could live my entire life tucked away like a dirty photograph? "I'm your daughter." "Everyone knows that," James said. "Everyone knows that now. That's what you wanted. Now you got it."
Oh, fantastic. That's a lovely place to end.
Yeah, just a little drama, a little intrigue.
I'm still mad at James, by the way.
Yeah, no, he was out of line. You can't treat your kids like that.
Like, you couldn't even like look for her later on.
He really believes that she should be honored that he did anything for her at all.
Thank you so much, Tayari. This has been a fantastic conversation. I have enjoyed myself thoroughly, and I am very, very sorry that we can't be in Lagos, but it feels like I was in Lagos with you and your beautiful book, Silver Sparrow.
Thank you for having me. This has been just such a pleasure. And thank you, Ake Festival, for this generous invitation. And I believe that we will gather in Lagos. We will come together, and I think we'll just continue celebrating literature and doing what we do best.
Absolutely. And if you haven't read it yet, please get your copy of Silver Sparrow at any good bookstore all over the continent, all over the world, and in the US. Available.
If you ever need a new place to go, you can join me in a world of words. When it seems like I'm nowhere to be found, if you look, you'll find me in a book. Let's take a ride to the past in the back of a phoenix. Let's float around the moon. You'll never be alone. Now you know where to look. Find me, find you, find the word in a book. You'll never be alone. Now you know where to look. Find me, find you, find the word in a book.
Stranger's Guide is not a typical American travel magazine. Our mission is to dive deep into a single location, commissioning work from great writers and photographers, famous individuals, as well as up-and-coming new voices. This year, we decided to go to Lagos. And we are proud of the volume we produced, with original work from some of Nigeria's best writers and photographers, working with luminaries like Wale Soyinka, Molara Wood, and Femi Kute. We think this is a very special volume, and we're so excited to bring it back to Lagos.
Sticky, spicy, sweet.
lẹ́nu ọ̀yà àwọn àtúkò lẹ́nu.
Don't touch me. I will get you arrested.
Kí ni?
Very, very easy.
Relax, everybody.
He shot you.
That 5 minutes madness only you can understand. Visit myspectre.com to get your Spectre experience. Spectre, loans in 5 minutes.